The Siege of the Palace, June 10, 1792, Paris, France. The Château de Versailles, once the pride of French monarchy, now stood as a symbol of crumbling power. King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette had fled, leaving behind a skeleton crew of loyal guards and servants. Among them were 80 Swiss guards, renowned for their bravery and unwavering loyalty. Major Karl Josef von Bachmann, commander of the Swiss Guards, surveyed the palace grounds with growing unease. The streets outside swarmed with 20,000 French revolutionaries, their angry shouts and chants echoing through the grand halls. "Sir, they're breaching the gates," a young guard shouted, bursting into the command center. Bachmann's jaw clenched. "Fall back to the palace entrance. We'll hold them off from there." The Swiss guards formed a tight line, their muskets at the ready. The mob surged forward, a sea of furious faces and makeshift weapons. "Fire!" Bachmann ordered, his voice drowned out by the cacophony. The guards' muskets roared, sending the front ranks of attackers tumbling back, but more surged forward, undeterred. The Swiss guards reloaded, their movements mechanical, their eyes cold. A cannon blast shattered the palace doors, sending splintered wood flying. The mob poured in, and the guards met them with bayonets. Bachmann fought with precision, his sword slicing through the chaos. A rebel lunged at him, and he parried with ease, his training kicking in. "Sir, we're being flanked," a guard shouted. Bachmann's gaze snapped left. A group of rebels had slipped around the side, heading for the royal family's chambers. "Stop them!" he bellowed, charging after the intruders. The guards closed ranks, fighting with desperation, but the sheer numbers overwhelmed them. One by one they fell, their bodies littering the opulent halls. Bachmann stumbled backward, wounded, as the mob closed in. He gazed up at the palace ceiling, the frescoes of gods and goddesses mocking him, swords slipping from his grasp. The Swiss guards fought on, surrounded by the enemy. Their stand would be remembered for centuries to come. As the battle raged, a different drama unfolded elsewhere. The Gallic onslaught, 52 BC, Alesia, Gaul. The Roman legion, led by Julius Caesar, stood besieged by 60,000 Gauls. The enemy army, a mix of fierce warriors and desperate farmers, had surrounded the Roman fortifications. Centurion Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa gripped his sword hilt, scanning the horizon. The Gallic forces swarmed like ants, their war cries echoing across the plain. "Looks like they're preparing for a push, sir," his lieutenant said, eyeing the enemy lines. Agrippa nodded. "Get the men ready. We'll meet them head-on." The Gauls charged, a tidal wave of steel and flesh. The Roman lines held firm, their shields interlocking, their pila javelins poised. "Release!" Agrippa shouted, his voice lost in the din. The pila flew, skewering the Gallic front ranks. The Romans drew their swords, advancing in a disciplined line. Agrippa fought with calculated ferocity, his blade slicing through Gallic shields. A warrior lunged at him, and he parried, crushing the man's throat with his shield boss. The Gauls faltered, their lines wavering. Agrippa seized the moment. "Forward! Push them back!" he bellowed. The Romans surged forward, their formation unbreakable. The Gauls reeled, their casualties mounting. But the enemy wouldn't yield. A fresh wave of warriors crashed against the Roman lines, sending Agrippa stumbling back. "Sir, we're being surrounded," a soldier shouted. Agrippa's gaze snapped left and right. The Gauls had breached the flanks, their cavalry encircling the Romans. "Form testudo," Agrippa ordered, his voice cold. The Romans closed ranks, their shields overlapping, forming an impenetrable tortoise shell. The Gauls rained arrows and javelins, stood unbroken, but their discipline a testament to Roman training. A lull in the fighting allowed Agrippa to breathe. The Gauls regrouped, their leaders conferring. "What now, sir?" his lieutenant asked. Agrippa's eyes narrowed. "We wait for their next move, and when they come, we'll cut them to pieces." As the Gauls prepared their next assault, a messenger slipped through the Roman lines. The King's Last Stand, June 10, 1792, Paris. France. King Louis XVI stood in the royal chambers, listening to the distant gunfire and screams. The Swiss guards held the palace entrance, but for how long? The Queen, Marie Antoinette, clutched his arm, her eyes wide with fear. "We must flee, Louis. It's our only chance." Louis shook his head. "I won't abandon my people. We'll stay and face whatever comes." A courtier burst in, breathless. "Sire, the mob has breached the outer gates. They're heading for the palace." Louis's jaw set. "Summon the remaining guards. We'll defend the royal chambers." The Queen's face paled. Louis, no, it's madness. He kissed her hand. I'll not yield to this rabble. Protect our children. As the mob closed in, Louis XVI stood tall, his shoulders squared. He drew his ceremonial sword, its blade gleaming in the fading light. The doors shattered and the mob poured in, their faces twisted with hatred. Louis raised his sword, his voice echoing through the chambers. Halt! I am your king! The attackers paused, momentarily cowed. Louis seized the chance. Swiss guards, to me, he bellowed. A handful of guards burst in, forming a barrier between the king and the mob. They fought with desperation, their bayonets flashing. Louis XVI stood firm, his sword raised. A rebel leader, a burly sans-culotte, sneered at him. You're no king, Louis Capet. You're a traitor. The sans-culotte lunged and Louis parried, his movements stiff. The mob closed in, overwhelming the guards, sending him stumbling. A musket butt crashed. The queen screamed as the mob seized the king. As Louis XVI fell, a different drama unfolded in ancient Gaul. The traitor in the ranks, 52 BC, Alesia, Gaul, centurion. Agrippa sensed a growing unease among his men. The Gallic forces seemed to know their every move, anticipating the Roman counterattacks. Sir, I think we have a problem, his lieutenant whispered, glancing around nervously. Agrippa's eyes narrowed. What is it? One of the new recruits. I think he's been talking to the Gauls. Agrippa's grip on his sword tightened. Who is it? The lieutenant nodded toward a young soldier, his face pale and sweaty. That one, sir. I saw him slipping away last night. Agrippa's mind raced. A traitor in their midst could spell disaster. Bring him to me, he ordered, his voice cold. The soldier Gaius trembled as Agrippa confronted him. Tell me the truth, Gaius. Have you been communicating with the enemy? Gaius's eyes darted left and right like a trapped animal. I didn't mean to, sir. They promised me riches and freedom. Agrippa's face remained impassive, but his gut churned with anger. You're a Roman soldier, Gaius. Your duty is to the legion, not to your own greed. The Gallic forces launched a fresh assault, and Agrippa pushed Gaius aside. Fight with us, Gaius. Redeem yourself, or die with the traitors. Gaius grabbed a sword, his movements hesitant. Agrippa led the charge, his men following, their shields interlocking. The battle raged, the Gauls pressing hard. Agrippa fought with calculated ferocity, his blade slicing through enemy ranks. A Gallic leader, a towering warrior, singled out Agrippa. The centurion met him head-on, their swords clashing. As they fought, Agrippa noticed Gaius, fighting with unexpected bravery. The young soldier took a Gallic spear to the shoulder, but kept fighting. Agrippa's respect for Gaius grew. Perhaps the young soldier would redeem himself. The counterattack 52 BC, Alesia, Gaul centurion. Centurion Agrippa sensed the tide of battle shifting. The Gallic forces, though numerically superior, began to waver. Their leader, Vercingetorix, fell back, wounded. Sir, they're faltering, his lieutenant exclaimed. Agrippa's eyes gleamed. Time for our counterattack. Get the men ready. The Roman legion formed a wedge formation, their shields overlapping, their swords poised. Agrippa led the charge, his men following, their battle cry echoing across the plain. The Gauls reeled, their lines breaking. Agrippa's wedge sliced through, sending enemy warriors tumbling. Sir, we're cutting them to pieces, a soldier shouted. Agrippa's face set in a grim smile. Push them back. Don't give them a chance to regroup. The Romans surged forward, their discipline and training paying off. The Gauls fled, their once proud army dissolving into chaos. Vercingetorix, the Gallic leader, rallied his men, but it was too late. The Romans closed in, surrounding the enemy. Agrippa faced Vercingetorix, their swords clashing in a final decisive duel. The Gallic leader fell, his sword slipping from his grasp. Agrippa stood over him, his chest heaving. It's over, he said, his voice cold. The Gauls surrendered, their army defeated. The Roman legion had won a crushing victory. As Agrippa stood victorious, a messenger approached, bearing news from the palace. The Swiss Guards sacrifice, June 10, 1792, Paris, France. The Swiss Guards fought on, surrounded by the mob. Major Bachmann lay wounded, but he refused to yield. Sir, we can't hold much longer, a guard shouted, his face bloody. Bachmann's jaw set. Protect the king. We'll hold them off. The guards formed a tight circle, their bayonets flashing. The mob surged forward, their shouts and screams deafening. A cannon blast shattered the palace doors, sending the guards and the defenders back. Bachmann fell, his sword slipping from his grasp. The guards fought on, their movements mechanical, their eyes cold. One by one they fell, their bodies littering the opulent halls. The mob closed in, their faces twisted with hatred. The last guard, a young man, stood tall, his sword raised. The mob leader, a burly sans-culotte, sneered at him. "You Swiss dogs, you'll pay for your loyalty." The guard's eyes flashed. "For the king," he shouted, charging forward. The mob overwhelmed him, their blades slicing through his uniform. He fell, his body joining the others. The Swiss guard's sacrifice was complete. The palace lay in ruins, the king captured. As the mob celebrated, a sense of unease spread through the city. The king's fate hung in the balance. In the streets, a whisper spread. The Swiss guards died for their king. Will anyone avenge them? The question echoed, unanswered, as the revolution marched on. Meanwhile, in ancient Gaul, the Gallic war machine, 52 BC, Alesia, Gaul. The Roman legion, victorious but battered, regrouped outside Alesia. Centurion Agrippa surveyed the battlefield, his eyes narrowing. "Sir, the Gauls are regrouping," his lieutenant said, nodding toward the enemy lines. Agrippa's jaw set. "We'll not give them a chance to recover. Prepare the men for pursuit." The Romans advanced, their formation unbreakable. The Gauls, demoralized and leaderless, crumbled before them. Vercingetorix, the Gallic leader, stood tall, his eyes flashing defiance. "You Romans will pay for this," he shouted, his voice echoing across the plain. Agrippa approached him, his sword raised. "Surrender, Vercingetorix. Your army is defeated." The Gallic leader's face twisted in anger. "I'd rather die than yield." Agrippa's expression remained cold. "As you wish." The Romans closed in, their blades slicing through the Gallic ranks. Vercingetorix fell, his body joined, pieces scattered across the battlefield. The Roman legion had won a crushing victory. As Agrippa stood victorious, a sense of unease spread through the ranks. The Gauls, though defeated, had fought with honor. Had the Romans truly won? The question echoed, unanswered, as the legion marched on. Meanwhile, in Paris, the empire's last hope, June 10, 1792, Paris, France. The king's fate hung in the balance. The mob, victorious, celebrated their triumph. The Swiss guards lay dead, their sacrifice forgotten. In the temple prison, King Louis XVI awaited his fate. The Queen, Marie Antoinette, clung to hope, her eyes red-rimmed. "Louis, we'll get through this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Louis's face remained calm, his eyes distant. "It's the end, my love. The monarchy is no more." The prison doors creaked open, and a guard entered, his face expressionless. "The Committee of Public Safety awaits you, Citizen Louis." Louis stood, his shoulders squared. "I'm ready." As he walked to his fate, a sense of unease spread through the city. The revolution's leaders, once united, now turned against each other. In the shadows, a figure watched, his eyes narrowed. The king's execution would spark a new wave of terror. The empire's last hope lay in the hearts of those who still believed in the monarchy. Would they rise up, or would the revolution consume all? The question echoed, unanswered, as King Louis XVI faced the guillotine. In ancient Gaul, Centurion Agrippa stood victorious, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "The empire will rise again," he whispered, his voice lost in the wind. The Roman legion marched on, its legacy eternal. As the sun set on two empires, one fallen and one rising, the echoes of history whispered secrets to the wind. The end.